Hi, good afternoon. Today I want to talk to you about a serious issue known as depression. I want you to understand the many faces of depression and what it causes and what it can bring. Now, many of you might know someone who suffers from this serious disease, and many of you might even suffer yourselves from this disease. But today, I'm going to go into detail exactly about what it is and how it does. You might ask yourself sometimes, how would I know if I have depression? How would I tell? What would be the symptoms? Well, a lot of times you can't tell. A lot of times you don't know. A lot of times depression doesn't really show faces. It just shows reactions, emotions. It doesn't pick a gender. It doesn't pick a race. It doesn't pick an age. It's just a feeling. It's an emotion that can be very devastating to someone who is suffering from it. Now, you in the audience are asking yourselves and looking around and saying, what is depression, right? Well, let me give you a little bit of a breakdown of what it is. Depression is a mental state, a roller coaster of many emotions. Picture yourself on a roller coaster going up and then going down and then going up and then going down. And so when you suffer from depression, you tend to have these emotional conflicts with yourself, wondering why. What can you do differently? What is it about? There's so many different things that depression causes. Lack of energy, lack of knowledge, lack of feeling, lack of love, self-worthlessness. I mean, there's just so many different things. It is a psychological disorder that I do want you to know. It has a lot of dangerous effects on people, unfortunately. I mean, as you stated earlier, I mean, the disorder can go from mild to violent. I mean, I've seen instances where people attack one another because they're so emotionally disturbed within. Depending on the severity, imagine a slight shower that's just starting to fall, and then all of a sudden a thunderous roar comes, lightning strikes, and it's gone. And all you hear is a soft rain again. That's somewhat depression. The disorder can be mild, as I stated, or severe, just depending on the brain level and the psyche. I mean, as you know, I mean, how different is everyone? Each person is different. Each phase is different. Each feeling is different. There's no specific arena. Let me just give you a little bit of a insight on what it is. You see this flower? This flower's nice, beautiful, full of life, full of joy. What do you see here? On top of that, you see emotion. You see this flower filled with maybe the life, the stem, the chemicals that are within the flower. It's bloomed, it's grown, it's full of color. But what happens when this flower diminishes? What happens when maybe the serotonin or the fluid within this flower, no water, it doesn't get any water, it doesn't get any sun, it's in complete darkness, and it begins to shatter? What happens to this flower? Well, imagine your brain. Your brain, every day, is this flower. It blooms, it grows, it feels, it senses, and then all of a sudden, something happens. You no longer have that feeling, you no longer have that emotion. That flower now, that you thought, which this is your brain, has now turned into this. Dead, withered, helpless, cold, dry. Everything and anything that could possibly have maybe given it life or love is gone. Now you ask yourself, do I suffer from depression? Do I know someone that suffers from depression? Well, it's hard to say, right? I mean, unless you live with the person or unless you physically watch the person, how would you know? That's what I'm getting at. In order to know and understand this emotional state, you have to be vigilant. You have to watch. You have to understand that these are feelings that sometimes can't be controlled. It's sometimes genetic, sometimes the makeup of oneself. But the thing is that it's a real disease, a disease that till time is still very much not understood. I mean, yes, there's medicines out there that can cure it, maybe, or maybe suffice the pain. There's treatments. But at the end of the day, when your loved one suffers from depression, depression hurts. Not only the person that it affects, but the person that lives with that person, that loved one, that wife, that son, that daughter, that child. Knowing about depression, knowing how to react, knowing how to deal, knowing how to look for the signs is your number one fight against helping someone with this issue. Now, I look to all of you in the audience and ask, how many of you have suffered from feeling blue, from feeling down, from maybe feeling just not up to it? Well, imagine feeling like that every single day. Imagine not knowing why that's caused. Imagine not knowing why you feel that way. That's how it affects another person. Now, as I showed you before, the flowers. Okay, well, let's go back to that. That's your brain, right? It's on a roller coaster. When you're depressed, you go from happy to sad to crying to not knowing what you want to do anymore, right? Well, here's the thing. In your brain, you have neurotransmitters. Those neurotransmitters work just like a freeway, maybe an expressway. Let's put it that way. You're on the expressway and everything's going fine. You know, you're driving. Then all of a sudden, there's a complete halt. We don't know why. We don't know what happened. All of a sudden, you just stop. That's your brain. That's the levels of serotonin in your brain where neurotransmitters are not going anywhere. Well, you exit, right? I mean, you're stopped. Why not? Get off the freeway. Now you're on the feeder. Unfortunately, on that feeder, it's a low step, right? If you're on the feeder, you're not really going too fast. You're going at a small pace, certain distance maybe. Well, imagine your brain that way. Imagine the lack of serotonin and neurotransmitters helping you move through that, helping you get to where you need to be. That's depression. That's how it affects your loved ones. That's how it affects your wife, your spouse, your son, your daughter, right? Those are things that you need to look for. Lack of energy, lack of appetite, crying, uncertainty, knowledge that something's just not right. That's depression. Now, the scary thing about depression is that it can become very severe to a point where... Okay, so I took my jacket off, as you see, because I mean it's getting a little warm in here, right guys? Okay, well, I just want to finish up where I was talking to you about and the deadly circumstances of depression. Bottom line is, take note, watch, listen. Depression is a serious, serious disease. It affects 1 out of 10 people, probably more nowadays. With the way circumstances are, the way things happen, you never know. I mean, unfortunately, I wish I could say that there was a cure to the disease. At this time, there isn't. But with everything, you know, future technology, it's changing. Just know that if you know someone who's affected by this serious disease, a psychological issue, help them. Understand. Know the pain that they suffer. I mean, I wish I could give you an answer to why it happens. Unfortunately, like I said, it's made up of different mental states, mild, severe, schizophrenia. I mean, there's so many components of depression. One thing I can tell you is that it does take a toll on your loved ones. It is a roller coaster ride of emotions. And as I showed you with the flowers before, that's exactly how your brain feels. That's exactly how your body feels. It hurts. So, one other example I can give you is, you know, Gatorade. When you've had a long workout, you're hot, you're sweaty, you're ready to call it a day, You reach for a cold Gatorade to replenish all of those electrolytes, right, that you lost. Well, sometimes your brain needs that Gatorade, and it's just not getting it right. I mean, maybe we don't have it. So be watchful. Listen. Be understanding. I know it's a lot to ask sometimes, but your loved ones would appreciate it. If you want to get more information about what I've talked about, there are several different websites that you can go to about depression. WebMD, Cymbalta. I mean, there's so many. Learn about it. A lot of times, you know, we're human. We have emotions and we feel. But at the end of the day, life is short. You want to live it. And all I can say is, be mindful, be watchful. Care about one another. Care about your family, care about your friends. If you know someone again that suffers from it, get help. Help's always available. I hope I was informative today. I hope I gave you a little bit of insight on how depression works. I hope you take an understanding and a look at what could possibly happen. And just understand that it is a disorder. And it is a roller coaster. Sometimes you can control it, sometimes you can't.